Hello again, and welcome back to another wonderful English lesson. Today we're going to learn about fairy tales and legends. So, let's see. What are we going to do today? First, we're going to talk about imagination. We're going to solve some word jumbles. We're going to talk about what's a fairy tale, what's a legend, and which one of them was Robin Hood. We're going to talk about the differences between the two. We're going to learn some new vocabulary, and we're going to give you the answer about Robin Hood. And then, to tie it all up, we're going to do a review and fun activities. So, what I'm going to need you to do is I'm going to need you to go get a pencil and some paper. Giving you a minute, go get it, and we'll begin. Okay, before we begin, I want you to come with me. I want you to come with me and look at this picture. When you look at this picture, what do you see? In my opinion, and again, this is only my opinion, but in my opinion, this is everything that dreams are made of. When we go to sleep, when we dream, when we fantasize, anything is possible. Everything is possible. As they say in English, the sky is the limit. And if you look really closely at this picture, a lot of it doesn't make sense. How could it be that there's water falling out of a book into outer space? Can there be a river in the sky? And do you see that the balloons and the birds are the same size? But that's what's beautiful about imagination, and that's also what's beautiful about fairy tales. Let's talk about fairy tales. But first, let's think about the words that you know have to do with fairy tales. In 4th and 5th grade, you learned about fairy tales. You learned about characters that appear in some stories. I'm going to give you 2 minutes. I want to see if you can unscramble these words. You ready? Go ahead. Okay, well, I only gave you 1 minute because I saw that everybody was doing it so quickly, you didn't really need those 2 minutes. So here we go. And just to make sure that you got it all right, the first one is a queen, second one is a princess, third is a king, fourth is magic, fifth is good, and the sixth one is evil. All of these things have to do with fairy tales. Remember that? Well, let's make sure we remember. There are actually 5 elements of a fairy tale. Number 1, you must begin with once upon a time. Second one, you must have a good character and an evil one. Third, you must have magic or some mystical quality. Fourth, there has to be some sort of problem or conflict. And 5, you must end when they live happily ever after. In fact, if you think about it, I don't think there's one fairy tale that we know of that doesn't start with once upon a time and ends with and they lived happily ever after. And if you think about it, it doesn't matter which one you think about, they all have a good person, and a bad person. Sometimes they have more, but at least one. There's usually magic or some mystical quality. I can already hear some of you saying, oh, well, I've seen it and there's no magic. Sometimes animals talk. I mean, let's look. Little Red Riding Hood. Little Red Riding Hood, the wolf talks. That's real. That's not real at all. It's a mystical quality. It's something that doesn't exist in real life. And it's sort of a magic. And there's always a problem or conflict. There's not one time that in a fairy tale we don't have some sort of problem. So what do I want to know? Is a fairy tale versus a legend. We already know what a fairy tale is, but what's a legend? Well, the easiest way for me to explain it to you is this way. A legend is usually a fairy tale that is based on a true story, but not always. There are certain stories that are out there that are legends. I mean, we all heard the word legendary. Legendary means that there's some sort of quality in that person that makes you want to imitate them, to be like them. In a legend, the person has some sort of quality that we want to be like them. Let's take, for example, Robin Hood. But before we begin, let's make sure we understand the new vocabulary. As I said, when we were looking at the picture of the book, things can be fantasy or they can be fact. Those are opposites. Usually there is a hero who is the good guy, the good man, the person that we want to be like. There's also the evil or bad man. Sometimes they're called the villain, but we're going to leave it at evil or bad man. The plot is the story. What happens in the story? When we're writing a fairy tale, we need to make sure that the plot is clear. We know what went wrong and how is it solved. Getting back to that hero, we want our hero to be brave. The hero is usually brave. He knows how to do everything and he's not afraid of anything. Kinds of. There are all kinds of stories. There are all kinds of fairy tales. There are all kinds of legends. And popular. Popular is a word that we use also in our mother tongues, but popular usually means liked by everyone. So now let's get back to Robin Hood. What I want you to do though, before we do that, see I forgot, is I want you to copy down these words. I'm giving you a minute so that you can copy them so that you'll be able to use them later. You know something? I'll go back and I'll give you a full minute here. Here we go. Okay, let's talk about Robin Hood. You can see on the screen behind me a whole bunch of stuff about Robin Hood. He's a hero from the 13th to 14th century. And that's a fact. It's not made up. It's not something that somebody imagined. He actually lived. And there are many kinds of stories that tell about him. Usually the story goes that he was a soldier who came back from the war to find that the sheriff, who is evil or a bad person, has taken away everyone's home, their money, and their land. Well, what's a man to do if they have no place to live and nothing to do? He goes into the forest to hide and to think about how he can help the people. He's upset, and he's sure that everybody else is upset with him. He joins with a whole group of other brave people, and they decide to steal from the rich to help the poor. He became a legend because people told his story from one to another for many, many years. And he's very, very popular. Which leads us to a question. Was he a good person or a bad person? We're going to go with he's a good person because he's become a legend and we want to emulate that. We want to emulate, or we want to be like, imitate. We want to imitate someone who's that great. So now let's do a little check. Do you remember what's the difference between a fairy tale and a legend? And what are the 5 elements of a fairy tale? I'm going to give you 2 minutes. I want you to copy the question and I want you to answer the question starting now. Okay, so let's check to make sure you understood. What's the difference between a fairy tale and a legend? As we said, a fairy tale is a fantasy story and a legend is a fairy tale based on fact. And the second one, what are the 5 elements of a fairy tale? Let's see. Number 1, must begin with once upon a time. Number 2, must have a good character and an evil one. Number 3, must have magical or some mystical quality. Again, something that makes it not so real. Number 4, must have some problem or a conflict. And number 5, must end with, and they lived happily ever after. I know that you're all familiar with all the fairy tales. You've probably heard them all. Cinderella, Snow White, Rapunzel. A lot of them are made into movies. But now I want to check your fairy tale trivia knowledge. Can you match the description to the character? So I'm going to give you 3 minutes. Read carefully and match them up. Good luck! Okay, let's check our answers. Let's look at the first one. Rapunzel. Rapunzel is the one with the really long braid that sat in the tower, and they had to climb up and get her. So that would be B. I have very long hair and a strange name. I don't like to be locked up in towers. Who am I? The next one, The Ugly Duckling. The Ugly Duckling is the story of the little duck. Actually, it's not a duck. He's a swan. And he's born to, and he's the woman who takes him in, the duck mother that takes him in, thinks he's the ugliest thing because between the two of us, swans are really ugly when they're born. But once they grow up, they are the most beautiful birds in the world. So Ugly Duckling is E. I'd like to swim and to fly. I'm rather beautiful now, but once I thought I was ugly. Red Riding Hood. That one was obvious. I have a grandmother, I wear a red cape, and I don't like wolves. The next one is also pretty easy. I made friends with 7 small people and lived with them in the forest. That would be Snow White. And the last one is the story of Sleeping Beauty, whose parents hid her from an evil fairy godmother who wanted her to die. Okay, so what did we learn today? First, we learned the 5 elements of a fairy tale. It's very important for you to know that. You're going to need to know how those 5 elements when you're asked to write a fairy tale in your classes. What's the difference between a fairy tale and a legend? Always helpful information. We learned new helpful vocabulary. And we went over the story of Robin Hood. Now here's some fun. This is the brain challenge. On the next slide is a logic puzzle. What you need to do is you need to solve it and send the answer to your teachers. Now, if you want to, you can take a picture of the screen. You don't need to copy it, but I would take a picture of it just to make sure that you have it in the event that you don't make it in the 15 minutes that are left. Okay? So, good luck to you, and I hope to hear from you soon. Hello again. I hope you solved the logic puzzle, and if you didn't, you have all day to solve it. I wish you all the best of luck. Thank you for watching, and I hope you join me for the next session. Bye!